morning sun rose over Tokyo just like any other day. People walked to work with coffee in their hands. Children laughed on their way to school. The city hummed with the peaceful rhythm of millions of lives moving forward together. Across the planet in Mumbai, São Paulo, Lagos, New York, Shanghai, and Cairo, the same scene played out. Humanity had finally learned to live in peace with itself after centuries of war and struggle. Sarah Chen sat in her apartment in San Francisco, getting ready for another day at her architecture firm. The news played on her screen as she made breakfast. The reporter talked about the new Mars colony expansion and the upcoming peace celebration marking 50 years without a major conflict on Earth. Sarah smiled. Her grandmother used to tell stories about the old days, when nations fought each other over resources and borders. Those days seemed like ancient history now. Then the screen flickered. The reporter stopped mid-sentence, pressing her hand to her earpiece. Her face went pale. "We're getting reports of something appearing in orbit above Tokyo. Multiple objects, large objects. We're switching to our satellite feed now." Sarah's coffee cup froze halfway to her lips. The image on screen showed massive ships hanging in the sky above Tokyo. They were dark, angular things that looked nothing like human vessels. They looked wrong, like they were made to intimidate rather than explore. "What are those?" the reporter whispered. The ships fired. Beams of purple light lanced down from orbit. Where they touched the ground, everything simply ceased to exist. Buildings vanished. Streets disappeared. People were there one moment and gone the next. The beams swept across Tokyo in a precise pattern, methodical and cold. Sarah watched in horror as the city she had visited just last month turned into a crater of molten glass and twisted metal. The news feed split into multiple screens. Mumbai was under attack. São Paulo was burning. Lagos, New York, Shanghai, Cairo, all of them. The same alien ships hung over each city, their weapons cutting through humanity's greatest achievements like they were made of paper. Sarah's phone exploded with calls and messages. Her hands shook so badly she couldn't answer. On the screen, the death toll counter climbed. 1 million, 2 million, 3 million. The numbers moved too fast to comprehend. These weren't statistics. These were people. Real people with families and dreams and lives. Then the ship stopped firing. For a moment, Sarah thought it was over. Maybe it was a warning. Maybe they would leave. But then every screen on Earth, every phone, every device capable of receiving a signal lit up with the same message. A face appeared. It was alien with too many eyes and skin that seemed to shift colors. When it spoke, the words came out in perfect English, perfect Mandarin, perfect Hindi, perfect every language humanity had ever spoken. "Humans of Earth, you are contamination. Your species has spread across this star system like a disease. We are the Valdran Imperium. We cleanse galaxies of inferior species. Your cities are destroyed as demonstration. Your weapons cannot harm us. You have one rotation of your planet to surrender completely. When we return, we will harvest your resources and exterminate your population. This is mercy. We are giving you time to prepare for extinction. Other species have fought us. All have failed. You will be our example to the rest of this sector. Accept your end with dignity." The transmission cut off. The world went silent for exactly 3 seconds. Then the screaming started. Sarah collapsed on her couch, her mind refusing to process what she had just witnessed. 7 million people. The updated count flashed on the screen. 7 million people dead in less than an hour. Killed on live broadcast for the entire world to see. Killed as a demonstration. She thought about her grandmother's stories again. The wars, the suffering, the times when humans killed other humans over ideas and land and pride. Her grandmother always ended those stories the same way. "We learned, Sarah, we learned to be better. We learned to choose peace." But peace hadn't protected Tokyo. Peace hadn't saved those 7 million people. The news network scrambled to make sense of the attack. Military analysts appeared on screen, their voices tight with barely controlled panic. The alien shields had absorbed everything Earth threw at them. Nuclear missiles, laser arrays, kinetic weapons, nothing worked. The Valdran ship sat in orbit, untouched and untouchable, waiting for humanity's surrender. Emergency broadcasts ordered people to evacuation centers. Governments convened crisis meetings. Religious leaders called for prayer. Scientists worked frantically to find some weakness in the alien technology, but everyone knew the truth. Humanity was outmatched. The Valdran had proven it in the most brutal way possible. Sarah's phone finally rang with a number she didn't recognize. She answered it numbly. Sarah Chen? A crisp military voice asked. Yes? This is Colonel Morrison with the United Nations Defense Coordination. Your grandmother is Admiral Helen Chen, correct? Sarah blinked. My grandmother died 5 years ago. I'm aware. She listed you as her emergency contact for classified materials. I need you to access the files she left you. Check your secure government inbox. Password is your grandmother's service number. Do it now, Ms. Chen. Do it fast. The line went dead. Sarah's hands shook as she pulled up her government account. She had never used it before. Didn't even know why she had one. She entered her grandmother's service number and the inbox opened. One file. Video format. Dated 5 years ago. The day her grandmother died. Sarah pressed play. Her grandmother appeared on screen, looking older than Sarah remembered, but with steel in her eyes. Sarah, if you're watching this, something terrible has happened. Earth has been attacked, and you need to know the truth about what your grandmother really did for a living. The video cut to images Sarah had never seen before. Massive underground facilities, fleets of warships hidden in asteroid bases, weapons that looked like they belonged in nightmares, production facilities on Mars that official records said didn't exist. For 50 years, sweetheart, we let the world believe we had chosen peace, and we had. But we also chose something else. Preparation. We humans have done terrible things to each other throughout history. We know every possible way to kill, to destroy, to survive. We decided to take all that knowledge and point it outward. Just in case. Just in case someone out there decided to test us. Her grandmother's face filled the screen again. By the time you see this, the protocols are already active. The UN Security Council is meeting right now. They'll vote. And they'll vote the same way we planned. No surrender. No negotiation. Total war. Sarah's grandmother leaned closer to the camera. I wish I could tell you we'll show mercy. I wish I could tell you we'll be the better species. But we won't, because they killed millions of us to make a point. So we're going to kill all of them to make a different point. Never attack Earth. The video ended. Sarah sat in the darkness of her apartment as the world outside descended into chaos. On the news, military experts debated surrender terms. Citizens screamed for protection. World leaders called for calm. But Sarah knew the truth now. Humanity wasn't preparing to surrender. Humanity was preparing to do what it had always done best. Survive no matter the cost. No matter how brutal. No matter how total the violence needed to be. Somewhere deep underground, her grandmother's plans were already in motion. The Valdren thought they had demonstrated their power. They thought they had broken humanity's spirit. They thought wrong. Sarah looked at the smoking ruins of Tokyo on her screen, at the 7 million names starting to scroll at the bottom. The Valdren had wanted to make an example of humanity. They were about to learn that humanity had been making examples of existential threats for thousands of years. They just didn't know it yet. Deep beneath the Swiss Alps, in a facility that wasn't supposed to exist, Admiral James Kovacs watched the world fall apart on 50 different screens. Each one showed a different city, a different crisis, a different group of terrified humans trying to understand what had just happened. The Valdren transmission played on repeat across every news channel. 7 million dead, surrender or die. Kovac had been waiting for this moment for 30 years. He had hoped it would never come. But hope wasn't strategy, and strategy was what he did best. All stations report ready, his second-in-command said. Captain Maria Santos had worked with Kovac since the beginning of the project. She looked calm, but he could see the fury in her eyes. She had family in Sao Paulo. Had family. Send the activation codes, Kovac ordered. All of them. Every facility, every ship, every weapon. I want everything online in the next 4 hours. Santos nodded and began typing. Around the world, beneath mountains and oceans and deserts, systems that had slept for decades began to wake up. Fusion reactors powered up. Weapons systems ran diagnostics. Millions of tons of military hardware that the public didn't know existed started preparing for war. The UN Security Council meeting appeared on the main screen. Kovac watched as the representatives filed into the emergency session. They looked scared. Good. Fear would make them decisive. The Secretary General called the session to order. We have all seen the Valdren ultimatum, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. We have 23 hours remaining. I am calling for a vote on our response. The motion is as follows. No surrender. No negotiation. Total war against the Valdren until they are completely destroyed. All in favor? Every hand went up. The vote was unanimous. 12 minutes from start to finish. Kovac allowed himself a grim smile. Broadcast the activation message. Frequency Omega-7. Let everyone know what we really are. The message went out on military channels first, then civilian networks. People across Earth stopped their panicking and watched as a new transmission began. A simple message appeared on screens. You are not alone. You are not defenseless. You never were. The first images showed the lunar base, not the small research station the public knew about, but the real base. 500 square kilometers of underground hangars and manufacturing plants. Warships the size of skyscrapers floated in the dark, their hulls painted matte black to avoid detection. Each one bristled with weapons that had no official names because officially they didn't exist. Then came Mars. The colony everyone knew about held 50,000 civilians. What they didn't know was that another 200,000 military personnel lived in facilities carved into Olympus Mons. The largest mountain in the solar system had been hollowed out and turned into a fortress. A fortress that was now opening its launch bays. The asteroid belt revealed its secrets next. What looked like random space rocks were actually weapons platforms, thousands of them. Each one could accelerate to a fraction of light speed and had enough kinetic energy to crack a continent. They had been positioned and waiting for 50 years. Back on Earth, mountain ranges split open. The Rocky Mountains, the Andes, the Himalayas, all of them had been carved out internally. Massive hangars housed fleets of atmospheric fighters and orbital interceptors. Manufacturing centers could produce a new warship every 36 hours. They had been building and stockpiling for half a century. The broadcast showed numbers. 30% of Earth's GDP for 50 years. Trillions upon trillions of dollars. Millions of people who had worked in secret their entire lives. Scientists who had developed weapons instead of medicine. Engineers who had built warships instead of cities. Soldiers who had trained for a war that might never come. Until now. Dr. Amara Okoye appeared on screen next. The world knew her as a quantum physics researcher who had won a Nobel Prize. What they didn't know was what her real research had been about. She stood in a laboratory surrounded by devices that looked wrong, like they existed in too many dimensions at once. "Hello, Earth," she said, her Nigerian accent crisp and clear. "My name is Dr. Amara Okoye. For 30 years I have been working on quantum displacement weapons. The Valdrin shields work by redirecting energy. Our weapons don't use energy. They use quantum tunneling to teleport depleted uranium directly past their shields. Each projectile masses 50 kilograms and travels at 60,000 kilometers per second. The Valdrin demonstrated their power. Now we will demonstrate ours." General Viktor Volkov came next, broadcasting from a command center somewhere in Siberia. The old Russian officer looked like he had been carved from ice. "I am General Volkov. I command the Solar Defense Initiative. We have 6,000 warships. We have 12,000 fighters. We have weapons you cannot imagine. The Valdrin killed 7 million of us. We will not kill 7 million of them. We will kill all of them. Every single one. They will learn what happens when you attack Earth." The broadcast ended with Admiral Kovac himself. He sat in his command chair, the screens behind him showing the mobilizing fleets. "Citizens of Earth, your governments have lied to you for 50 years. We told you we had chosen peace. We did choose peace, but we also prepared for war. We remembered our history. We remembered every terrible thing we did to each other when we fought. We took all that knowledge and we weaponized it, not to use against each other, to use against anyone who thought they could destroy us." He leaned forward. "The Valdrin think they have demonstrated power. They think they have broken us. They are wrong. We are humanity. We survived ice ages. We survived plagues. We survived ourselves. We will survive this. And when we are done, the Valdrin will be nothing but a warning to every other species in the galaxy. Do not attack Earth." Sarah Chen watched the broadcast from her apartment, tears streaming down her face. Her grandmother had been part of this, had helped build this, had spent her life preparing for this exact moment. Around the world, people reacted. Some felt betrayed by the secrecy. Others felt relief that they weren't helpless. Most felt something else entirely, a grim satisfaction that humanity wasn't going to go quietly into extinction. The Valdrin ships remained in orbit, their ultimatum counting down. They had no idea what was coming for them. They had studied dozens of spacefaring species. They knew how civilized societies fought. They used rules. They held trials. They valued honor and measured responses. Humanity had rules too. But those rules had been written in blood over thousands of years of the most brutal warfare imaginable. Humanity knew how to fight total war. Humanity knew how to commit genocide. Humanity knew how to be monstrous when monsters came calling. The Valdren had wanted to make an example. They were about to become one. Deep in the lunar base, the First Fleet finished its launch preparations. Admiral Kovacs watched the status reports flow in. Every system green. Every weapon loaded. Every ship crewed by people who had lost someone in the attack. People who would fight with the fury that only grief could bring. All ships report ready for launch, Santos said. Kovacs nodded. Then let's go to war. Launch the fleet. Target the Valdren ships in orbit. No warnings. No hails, no mercy. Fire everything. The order went out. From the moon. From Mars. From the asteroid belt. From Earth itself. Humanity's hidden arsenal came to life. Thousands of warships began moving toward the Valdren fleet. The aliens had 23 hours left on their ultimatum. They wouldn't get 23 minutes. The age of peace was over. Humanity had tried civilization, had tried diplomacy, had tried being better than its violent past. The Valdren had shown them why that was a luxury, not a right. Now humanity would show the Valdren what happened when you woke up the monster and forced it to remember what it really was. A survivor, a killer. A species that had clawed its way to the top of Earth's food chain by being more vicious than anything else that tried to stop it. The Valdren were about to learn that lesson the hard way. Commander Zethkar of the Valdren Imperium watched Earth from his flagship with satisfaction. The demonstration had gone perfectly. 7 primitive cities destroyed in under an hour. The humans had fired their weapons uselessly against Valdren shields. Now they huddled in their remaining cities waiting for extinction. This was how it always went. Species resisted at first, then accepted their fate. The Valdren had cleansed 43 civilizations. Humans would be 44. Commander, we are detecting launches from the lunar surface, his sensor officer reported. Zethkar barely looked up from his tactical display. Human evacuation craft. Let them flee. It will make the final cleansing easier when they are concentrated in fewer locations. Sir, these are not evacuation craft. They are warships, large warships. Hundreds of them. Now Zethkar looked up. Impossible. Our intelligence showed humans have only a dozen orbital vessels. All of them scientific. The sensor display updated. Red dots multiplied across the screen. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. Warships poured out from the lunar surface, from Mars, from locations throughout the asteroid belt, from Earth itself. Ships that had somehow been completely invisible to Valdren sensors until this moment. Raise shields to maximum, Zethkar ordered, his confidence faltering. Prepare weapons. Broadcast surrender demand on all frequencies. The human response came instantly. Not words, just weapons fire. The first projectiles hit the Valdren shields and bounced off harmlessly. Zethkar relaxed slightly. The shields would hold. They always held. But then the second wave arrived. These projectiles didn't hit the shields at all. They simply appeared inside them, teleporting through the energy barriers as if they didn't exist. 50-kilogram slugs of depleted uranium traveling at relativistic speeds punched through Valdren hulls like they were made of paper. 3 of Zethkar's escort ships exploded in seconds. The rest scrambled to maneuver, but the human weapons tracked them perfectly. Every shot hit. Every hit killed. Impossible! Zethkar shouted. Our shields are impenetrable. How are they doing this? His science officer looked up from her console, terror in her 6 eyes. Commander, the projectiles are quantum tunneling. They bypass the shields entirely. They are materializing inside our ships and... Her console exploded. The human fleet had closed to point-blank range and was firing everything. Kinetic weapons, missiles, directed energy weapons, and things the Valdren sensors couldn't even identify. The Valdren formation shattered as ships tried desperately to escape. Admiral Kovacs watched from his command center as the battle unfolded. Status report, he ordered calmly. Enemy fleet is in full retreat, Santos reported. We've destroyed 60% of their vessels. The remaining ships are attempting to break orbit. Don't let them, Kovacs said. Not one ship escapes. Not one alien survives. This ends here. The lunar fleet split into pursuit groups. Human ships were faster, more maneuverable, and had been designed specifically for this kind of combat. Every Valdrin escape route had been calculated months ago. Every jump point had been mined. Every possible retreat had human ships waiting. Zethkar's flagship shuddered as another volley hit home. His ship was dying around him. Half his crew was dead. His shields were down. His weapons were offline. He couldn't understand it. The Valdrin were the superior species. They had conquered dozens of star systems. They had technology that a human transmission cut through his failing systems. A female face appeared on his screen. Admiral Helen Chen's granddaughter, though Zethkar didn't know that. She spoke in perfect Valdrin. "You wanted to demonstrate power," Sarah Chen said, her voice cold. "You killed 7 million of us on live television. You thought we would surrender. You were wrong. We've been killing each other for thousands of years. We know every trick, every tactic, every way to bring death. You showed us yours. Now we're showing you ours." Zethkar tried to speak, to demand honor, to protest that this wasn't how civilized species fought. But Sarah cut him off. "We tracked your ships. We know where you came from. We're coming for your homeworld next. Everyone you love. Everyone you know. They're going to die because you decided to kill 7 million of ours. This is what happens when you attack Earth." The transmission ended. Zethkar's ship exploded 3 seconds later. Around Earth's orbit, the last Valdrin vessels died. The battle had lasted 18 minutes. Not one human ship was destroyed. The Valdrin fleet, which had seemed invincible just hours ago, was now debris. But the humans weren't done. They had tagged 3 Valdrin ships with quantum trackers before destroying them. The trackers had transmitted coordinates. Valdrin homeworld. Valdrin colonies. Valdrin supply routes, everything Dr. Okoye broadcast to her team. "Begin reverse engineering Valdrin FTL technology. I want working drives in our ships within 2 weeks. We're going after them." 2 weeks? One of her engineers protested. "That's impossible. 2 weeks or I find someone who can do it in 1, Okoye snapped. "The Valdrin have a head start. Every hour we delay gives them time to prepare. We need to hit them while they're still in shock." General Volkov coordinated with military factories across the solar system. "Convert all production to military vessels. I want 10,000 ships ready for invasion within 3 months. Use the Valdrin wrecks for raw materials. Nothing goes to waste." Sarah Chen found herself drafted into the war effort. Her grandmother had listed her in the classified files for a reason. Sarah was an architect. She understood how to build things. Now they needed her to understand how to break them. She studied the layout of Valdrin cities from captured data, identified infrastructure weak points, calculated optimal bombardment patterns. She hated every second of it. But she thought about Tokyo, about the 7 million dead, about the Valdrin commander who had broadcast that message promising humanity's extinction, and she kept working. Across Earth, the mood shifted. The panic and fear transformed into something else. Humanity had been reminded that it was capable of violence on a scale most people had forgotten. The peaceful 50 years had been an anomaly, not the norm. For most of human history, survival meant being better at killing than whatever was trying to kill you. The Valdrin had picked the wrong species to make an example of. 3 weeks later, human ships equipped with reverse-engineered FTL drives prepared to jump. The invasion fleet had grown to 15,000 vessels. Every ship was crewed by volunteers. There were millions more volunteers than positions available. People who had lost family in the attack. People who wanted revenge. People who understood that the only way to ensure Earth's safety was to make sure the Valdrin could never threaten anyone again. Admiral Kovac addressed the fleet before departure. His face appeared on every ship's main screen. Behind him, the Earth hung in space, beautiful and scarred. 7 massive craters marked where the Valdrin had struck. Soldiers of Earth. "We are about to do something humanity has never done before. We are about to bring war to another species' homeworld. We are about to become the invaders, the aggressors, the monsters. Some of you may have doubts. Some of you may think we're becoming like them. But remember this. We didn't start this war. We didn't kill 7 million innocent people to demonstrate our power. They did. We're just finishing what they started." He paused, letting his words sink in. The Valdrin think they understand war. They don't. They've conquered species that fought according to rules, that valued honor, that believed in proportional responses. We're not going to fight that way. We're going to fight like humans. Dirty, brutal, total. We're going to make them regret every single life they took, and when we're done, they'll serve as a warning to every other species out there. Do not attack Earth. The fleet jumped to FTL. 15,000 human warships vanished from Earth's solar system and reappeared 30 light-years away, in orbit around Valdrith, the Valdrin homeworld, a planet that had never known war, a paradise built on the suffering of conquered species. It was about to learn what suffering really meant. The Valdrin detected the fleet immediately. They scrambled their defenses, sent distress signals, called for reinforcements. But humanity had planned for all of it. Human ships jammed their communications, destroyed their satellites, cut off every possible avenue of escape or reinforcement. Then the bombardment began. Not an invasion, just pure destruction. Humanity had learned from its own history. Sometimes the only way to stop an enemy was to break them completely. The Valdrin had demonstrated their power by destroying 7 cities. Humanity was about to demonstrate that they could destroy an entire civilization. Valdrith had been at peace for 3,000 years. The planet's population of 8 billion Valdrin had never heard weapons fire in their lives. Their cities were works of art, towering spires that reached toward the sky. Gardens covered half the continents. The oceans were clean and full of life. It was paradise, built on the labor of 43 enslaved species and protected by the most powerful military in the sector. Then the humans arrived. Citizen Malshara was tending her garden when the sky filled with ships. At first she thought they were Valdrin vessels returning from another conquest. Then the bombardment began. Purple beams that she recognized from victory broadcasts lanced down from orbit. But these beams weren't aimed at primitive alien cities. They were aimed at her world. The industrial sector exploded first. Factories that produced everything from clothing to starship components vanished in nuclear fire. Then came the spaceports. Every ship, every shuttle, every escape pod was destroyed before it could launch. The military bases were next. Valdrin defense forces scrambled to respond, but human ships were everywhere, their weapons more accurate than anything the Valdrin had ever faced. Malshara ran for shelter as her neighborhood shook. She had seen footage of human cities burning. She had watched her government's demonstration of power and felt pride that the Valdrin were so strong. Now those same humans were here and they were doing to Valdrith what her people had done to Earth, except slower, more methodical, more cruel. Admiral Kovac watched from his flagship as Valdrith burned. He felt no satisfaction, no joy, just a grim certainty that this was necessary. The Valdrin had to be broken completely or they would rebuild and try again. That was what humanity would do. That was what any survivor species would do. Target the power grid next, he ordered. Cut electricity to every major city, then water treatment, then food distribution centers. Make them understand what it means to be helpless. The bombardment continued for days. Human ships fired in shifts, maintaining constant pressure. They avoided residential areas at first, focusing on infrastructure. The Valdrin government broadcast increasingly desperate pleas for mercy. The humans responded by playing footage of Earth's destroyed cities. 7 million names scrolling endlessly across transmission frequencies. No negotiations. No mercy. After 1 week, the Valdrin Military Command Center managed to get a message through to the human fleet. General Vexthar, Supreme Commander of Valdrin forces, appeared on screen. He looked defeated, his proud bearing gone. Admiral Kovac, we surrender unconditionally. We will disarm. We will pay reparations. Please stop the bombardment. Our civilians have done nothing wrong. Kovac's face remained expressionless. Did Earth's civilians do something wrong? Did the 7 million people you killed deserve to die? You broadcast their deaths to demonstrate your power. Now we're demonstrating ours. Your surrender is noted. The bombardment continues. Vexthar's face showed shock. But we surrendered. You are violating every law of civilized warfare. We're not civilized, Kovac said coldly. We're humans. And you made us remember what that means. Kovac out. The transmission ended. The bombardment intensified. Sarah Chen worked from a command ship in the fleet. She had become one of the primary tactical planners, using her architectural knowledge to identify which targets would cause maximum disruption with minimum casualties. She told herself she was being merciful, that targeting infrastructure instead of people was the moral choice. But at night, when she tried to sleep, she saw Tokyo burning, saw those 7 million names, and she kept working. On Valdrith, the population began to starve. Food distribution had collapsed. Water was contaminated or unavailable. Hospitals couldn't function without power. The Valdren had never experienced hardship, didn't know how to survive without their technology. People died not from human weapons, but from the simple absence of the systems that kept them alive. The other species in Valdren space watched carefully. Humanity had sent envoys to all of them, species that had been enslaved for generations, conquered peoples who had lived under Valdren rule and suffered Valdren cruelty. The human message was simple: rise up. We'll support you. Together we'll end the Valdren Empire. The first rebellion started on Keltar 5, a mining world where the native Keltari had been forced into labor camps for 200 years. When the Valdren garrison tried to suppress the uprising, human ships appeared. They didn't send troops, they just bombed the garrison from orbit and left. The Keltari were free to handle their former oppressors however they chose. What the Keltari chose was brutal. The Valdren garrison was given the same mercy they had shown the Keltari for 2 centuries. None. Rebellion spread across the empire. 43 species rose up simultaneously. Humanity provided weapons, intelligence, and orbital support, but they made each species do their own fighting. This wasn't a human war of conquest. This was liberation. The freed species had to win their own freedom or it wouldn't mean anything. Within 2 months, the Valdren Empire collapsed. Colonies went dark. Communication networks failed. Military vessels limped home to find their bases destroyed or captured. The species that had conquered dozens of civilizations was reduced to defending their homeworld, and they were losing. Admiral Kovac received reports from the freed worlds. Some of them weren't pretty. Former slaves committing atrocities against former masters, revenge killings, summary executions. Some of his officers suggested intervening, stopping the violence before it went too far. Kovac refused. We're not the galaxy's police force. We're not here to enforce morality. We're here to make sure the Valdren never threaten Earth again. If the species they enslaved want revenge, that's between them and the Valdren. Dr. Okoye disagreed. She argued in command meetings, her voice rising. We're supposed to be better than this. We're supposed to show that humanity has evolved past mindless revenge. We did evolve, Kovac shot back. We evolved into a species that protects itself. The Valdren killed 7 million of us. They threatened to exterminate our entire species. Every Valdren alive supported that decision. They cheered when our cities burned. They thought it was entertainment. Now they're learning what it feels like. I'm not going to stop that lesson before it sinks in. The argument continued, but Kovac's position held. The bombardment of Valdrith continued. 3 months after the invasion began, Valdren cities were ruins. Their technology was destroyed. Their population was reduced by half, not from weapons but from starvation and disease. The survivors lived in makeshift camps, struggling to grow food in contaminated soil. General Vexthar tried to surrender again, and again, and again. Each time the humans acknowledged the surrender and continued bombing. It drove the Valdren command insane. This wasn't war. This was extermination. This was what they had threatened to do to Earth, except the humans were actually doing it. Finally, after 4 months, Admiral Kovac called a halt. The bombardment stopped. The human fleet maintained orbit but held their fire. Vexthar appeared on screen immediately, desperate and broken. We have nothing left. You've destroyed our civilization. We can't threaten anyone anymore. Please, let us live. Let us rebuild. We've learned our lesson. Kovac studied the Valdren general for a long moment. Have you? Your government broadcast the destruction of our cities as entertainment. Your people celebrated our deaths. You thought we were weak, primitive, easy to destroy. Were you wrong? Yes, Vexthar whispered. We were wrong. We didn't understand. We thought all species were like us. We didn't know humans were monsters? Kovac finished. We're not monsters. We're survivors. And we survived by being better at violence than anything that tried to kill us. You tried to kill us. This is the result. He leaned forward. Here are the terms. The Valdren Empire is dissolved. You will never have a military again. You will never have ships capable of leaving this star system. You will spend the next 1,000 years rebuilding your world with primitive technology. Every piece of advanced equipment you have is now scrap. You wanted to return us to the Stone Age. Welcome to yours. And if we refuse? Vexthar asked, though he already knew the answer. Then we turn Valdrith into a second asteroid belt and make sure no one ever forgets what happens when you attack Earth. Your choice. Survival or extinction. You have 1 hour to decide. The transmission ended. Vexthar sat in the ruins of his command center and made the only choice he could: survival. Even if it meant humiliation, even if it meant his species would spend centuries clawing their way back to civilization, at least they would survive. The Valdran government accepted the terms. Human occupation forces landed to enforce them. Every ship was destroyed. Every factory was demolished. Every computer was smashed. Valdran scientists who protested were given the choice: accept the terms or be executed as war criminals for supporting the attack on Earth. Most accepted. Some didn't. Those who didn't were tried, convicted, and executed, not by humans, by representatives of the 43 species the Valdran had enslaved. Justice delivered by the victims. Sarah Chen watched it all from orbit. She had helped plan the bombardment, had calculated which targets would cause maximum damage, had turned her architectural skills toward destruction. She had done what was necessary to protect Earth, to prevent the Valdran from ever threatening humanity again. 3 years after the Valdran invasion, Sarah Chen stood before the memorial in San Francisco. 7 million names were carved into black stone that stretched for blocks. Each name was small, precise, permanent. Above them, the simple inscription: "They showed us cruelty. We showed them capacity. We will never forget. We will never forgive. We will never be victims again." The crater where Tokyo had been was now a lake. They had filled it with water and built a monument at its center. Visitors took boats out to pay their respects. The other 6 destroyed cities had similar memorials. Places where millions had died in minutes, places that would never be rebuilt, places that served as reminders. Sarah touched her grandmother's name on the memorial. Admiral Helen Chen had died 5 years before the invasion, but her work had saved humanity. The hidden arsenals, the secret fleets, the paranoid preparation that everyone had thought was excessive. It had been exactly enough. "She would be proud of you," a voice said behind her. Sarah turned to find Admiral Kovac. He looked older now, the weight of what they had done aging him faster than time alone could manage. He wore his dress uniform, medals across his chest, but his eyes were tired. "Would she?" Sarah asked. "We burned their world, reduced them to primitive technology, made them watch as we destroyed everything they built. They killed 7 million of us to make a point," Kovac said. "We made our point clear too. Don't attack Earth. The galaxy heard us. The galaxy had indeed heard." In the 3 years since Valdrith's burning, humanity had become the dominant military power in the sector. Other species that had once looked at humans as newcomers now gave them wide berth. Some out of respect, most out of fear. The Galactic Council had been in emergency session for 2 years debating what to do about humanity. The footage of Valdrith burning was required viewing in every diplomatic academy, every military school, every xenopolitics course across known space. The question wasn't whether humans were dangerous. The question was what to do about it. Ambassador Lisa Zhang prepared for her address to the Galactic Council. It would be humanity's first official diplomatic contact with the wider galaxy. Before the Valdran invasion, Earth had been isolated, ignored, barely noticed. Now every species wanted to know humanity's intentions. The council chamber was massive, designed to accommodate hundreds of species with different environmental needs. Zhang stood at the central podium, human and alone, surrounded by aliens who were still deciding if humanity was a threat that needed to be contained. She began speaking. Her words translated into hundreds of languages simultaneously. "Members of the Galactic Council, I am Ambassador Lisa Zhang, representing the United Nations of Earth. 3 years ago, the Valdran Imperium attacked our homeworld without provocation. They killed 7 million civilians. They broadcast their deaths as entertainment. They promised to exterminate our entire species. We responded with overwhelming force. We destroyed their military. We occupied their homeworld. We reduced their civilization to a pre-industrial state. Many of you have questioned our actions. Some of you have called us monsters. Perhaps you are right." Murmurs spread through the chamber. This wasn't the diplomatic speech they had expected. Zhang continued. "Humanity has a violent history. We nearly destroyed ourselves dozens of times before we reached the stars. We fought wars that killed hundreds of millions. We developed weapons capable of ending all life on Earth. We did terrible things to each other, things we are deeply ashamed of. But we learned from those mistakes. We chose peace. We chose cooperation. We thought we had evolved past our violent nature." She paused, letting her words sink in. The Valdrin taught us we were wrong. Peace is a luxury afforded to species that are strong enough to defend themselves. We weren't strong enough. Not visibly. So we hid our strength. We built weapons in secret. We prepared for the worst while hoping for the best. When the Valdrin attacked, they didn't encounter the peaceful species they expected. They encountered survivors. And survivors do whatever is necessary to survive. Zhang's voice hardened. The Valdrin enslaved 43 species. They conquered dozens of worlds. They killed billions over centuries of expansion. Where was the Galactic Council then? Where were the peacekeepers? The diplomats? The civilized species who could have stopped them? You did nothing. You watched as they grew stronger, and hoped they wouldn't turn their attention to you. You made peace with monsters because it was convenient. The chamber erupted in protests. Zhang waited for them to quiet. We understand. Survival requires compromise. Sometimes you make deals with dangerous species to avoid conflict. We're not judging you. We're just making sure you understand what we are. We are the species that stops monsters. We're the species that responds to genocide with total war. We're the species you call when something needs to be destroyed completely. She pulled up a holographic display showing Valdrith, the ruined cities, the primitive survivors, the complete destruction of their civilization. This is what happens when you attack Earth. This is your warning. Not a threat. A simple statement of fact. We seek peace with all species. We offer cooperation, trade, mutual defense, but if you attack us, we will erase you from existence. We will make you an example. We will ensure that no one ever makes the mistake of thinking humanity is weak again. The chamber was silent now. Zhang looked around at the hundreds of species watching her. We know what we did to the Valdrin. We know what it makes us. We're not proud of it, but we would do it again. We would do it to any species that threatens Earth. Because we learned something from our violent history. The only way to ensure peace is to make war so terrible that no one dares start it. She took a breath. So here is humanity's position. We will join the Galactic Council. We will participate in diplomacy. We will share our technology with species that share theirs. We will defend our allies with the same fury we defend ourselves. But we will not apologize for surviving. We will not apologize for being good at violence. And we will not pretend to be something we're not. We are humanity. We are survivors. Remember that. Zhang stepped down from the podium. The chamber exploded in debate. Some species called for humanity's containment. Others argued for alliance. A few, mostly species that had been freed from Valdrin slavery, applauded openly. The vote came 3 days later. Humanity was admitted to the Galactic Council with unprecedented restrictions. Human warships were limited to specific zones. Human weapons technology was subject to oversight. Human military expansion was kept, but they were admitted. Because everyone understood that excluding humanity would just make them more dangerous. The species that had been enslaved by the Valdrin formed an alliance with Earth. They called it the Liberation Coalition. Together they rebuilt their worlds and created a mutual defense pact. Humanity shared technology freely with them. Weapons technology, medicine, manufacturing, everything. The coalition grew stronger every year. Sarah Chen had left the military and returned to architecture. But she didn't design buildings anymore. She designed orbital defense platforms, the kind that made invasion impossible, the kind that ensured Earth would never be vulnerable again. Her work was in demand across the coalition. Every freed species wanted Earth's protection. She visited her grandmother's grave on what would have been her 100th birthday. We did it, Sarah said to the headstone. We survived. We protected Earth. We made sure no one will ever attack us again. But I don't know if we did it the right way. I don't know if there was a right way. The wind carried no answers. But Sarah noticed something new. Flowers, hundreds of them. Left by people from across the solar system. People who had lost family in the Valdrin attack. People who wanted to thank the woman who had prepared humanity for the worst. Admiral Kovacs retired after the Galactic Council vote. He spent his remaining years writing a history of the war. Not a justification, just a record. He wanted future generations to understand what had happened and why, to learn from it, to hopefully never need to repeat it. Dr. Okoye continued her research, but she changed focus. Instead of weapons, she worked on detection systems, ways to identify threats before they became existential, ways to prevent wars instead of winning them. She never forgot what her weapons had done. She spent the rest of her life trying to make sure they never needed to be used again. General Volkov died 2 years after the war, his heart giving out from stress and age. His funeral was attended by every surviving member of the Solar Defense Initiative. They buried him on Luna, in sight of the hangars he had built. His tombstone read simply, "He prepared us. We survived." The Valdrin remained on their homeworld, slowly rebuilding their civilization under human observation. Their children grew up hearing stories of the empire their ancestors had built, and the humans who had torn it down. Some dreamed of revenge, most just wanted to survive. The occupation would last 100 years, maybe longer. Humanity wanted to make sure the lesson stuck. Other species began coming to Earth, not to invade. To learn. They wanted to understand what made humans so effective at warfare, what made them so dangerous. The answers surprised them. It wasn't superior technology. It wasn't even tactical brilliance. It was willingness. Humans were willing to do whatever was necessary to survive, to become monsters if monsters were needed.